Welcome to Unit 4, Stage in Detail. This is very similar to the Sprite in Detail. However, this will be focusing on the stage, and you'll see that much of the information we used in Unit 3 with the Sprite in Detail will cross over into Unit 4, the Stage in Detail. Alright, let's go ahead and jump in and look at the differences here. First things first, let's go over the learning objectives for this unit. One, you're going to learn how to access the stage information and change the properties of your stage. Next, you're going to know the difference between the stage's backdrop and a costume. Third, you're going to learn how to import and create sounds for your stage, very similar to the Sprite, right there on the third bullet point. And last but not least, understand that some of the programming tools are not available for a stage and why. Okay, the stage tabs. They're essentially the same as your sprites, so let's go ahead and look at those. To help me out with that, I'm going to pull Scratch up so it's alongside these bullet points. First, the scripts tabs. This is going to be just like your Sprite, except with the scripts for the stage, some of the programming blocks are not available. Let's get Scratch over here. So we got Scratch, and if we look at our scripts tab, I guess I can make it full screen. So our scripts tab for the stage, let's click on stage. You'll notice I had motion selected, and immediately there are no blocks for motion for the stage. That's because the stage cannot move. Now you go to say looks, you'll notice that with the stage, it has a limited number of looks blocks associated with it. If we come over to our Sprite just to see the difference, there's a tremendous more amount of programming blocks for the looks category for a Sprite as opposed to the stage. Next, sound, it's pretty much the same number as the Sprite. I don't think there's any difference. Yeah, there's no difference. Next, the pen tool for the stage. The only thing you can use the pen tool for on the stage is just to clear out any sort of markings that you had made with the pen tool on a Sprite. If you click on a Sprite, you can see that it has all the different blocks, whereas with the stage, there are no blocks associated with the pen tool for the stage. Data, this will be the same for a stage as a Sprite. If you click on, let's just create a variable here. Oh, I forgot to mention something. Okay, so you'll notice it has all the same blocks, and the same goes for a list, but check this out real quick. So whenever you create a variable, your only option is to create global variables for the stage. You can't create a independent variable. So the only variable it lets you create is a global variable for all the sprites. Next, events. This has same number of events as it does the Sprite. Yeah, there's no difference. Here's a big difference. You'll notice on the Sprite it says when this Sprite is clicked. If we come back to stage, it changes to when the stage is clicked. Not a biggie, but just, FYI. Next, control tab. There's actually there's a lot less control blocks for the stage than the Sprite. Yeah, you can see right down here because the Sprite has the ability to clone itself, so there's no cloning blocks for the stage. Next, sensing. Again, it has a little bit less than the Sprite because you come over here, it has more blocks, and they're a little bit different because the sensing and the listening for the Sprite are going to be associated with motion and collisions, whereas the stage won't have any of those type of items with it. Operators, that's pretty much all the same for the Sprite. Let's just look at it. Okay, no difference. And then more blocks for the stage. That's up to you on how many blocks actually show up whenever you create a block, but it will probably be a little bit different since, again, the stage can't move around or have any sort of collision. Next, we have the backdrops tab for the stage. This would be correlated with the costumes tab on a Sprite. So the stage has backdrops and the sprites have costumes. And you can pretty much do all the same things with the backdrop that you can use with a costume tab. Let's pull a Scratch up so we can check it out. So on our backdrops for the stage, you'll notice it has kind of the same art effects, it has the same kind of tools right there. The big difference you'll see with any image you create inside of your backdrop for the stage is that its size, no matter what, will be 480 by 360. It will automatically adjust those proportions so the stage backdrop fills up the entire screen. Doesn't matter what you do. Say I'm creating a picture, You notice automatically makes it 480 by 360. And let's just put a little dot right here. Okay, that's all I drew was that little shape. And that's the only thing that appears on the stage. However, if you look at the backdrop, it's still those dimensions. Next, we have the Sounds tab. The Sounds tab for the stage is exactly the same as the Sprite. No big difference there. Click on the Sounds tab, has the same features, buttons, editing, effects. Okay, so there's really no difference between a Sprite sound and a stage sound. Personally, I like to host any sort of background music or some sort of sound effect that would be used by multiple objects. I host it on the stage just so it has a central location for access, and I don't have some sound that's sitting out on Sprite, because once you get 10, 20, 30, 40 different sprites in your program, it can get a little confusing at times. Let's go ahead and look at adding a new stage backdrop in a little bit more detail. That seems to be something you'll be doing on a regular basis. It's just like a sprite. However, like I told you, the terminology is associated as a backdrop. And you can see here whenever you click on this icon from the backdrop tab for adding a new image, Scratch will pull up automatically these backdrop images for the stage. And this is important because sometimes you're going to be on the stage and not realize it, and you try to add a costume for a sprite and all you get are backdrops. So make sure you look at the names so that way you know you're on the stage, or if you're on a costume section, you can pretty much assume that you are not on the stage if you're trying to add a backdrop. So the terminology can help you figure out where you are in the process. And again, it works exactly as the sprite. And let's go ahead and look at that just so we can say we did it. So we go to backdrops, and let's click on our icon here, and you'll notice it pulls up all the different backdrops available to us. And we can sort these out by their categories and get some different images for our backdrop. Let's use the castle. There we go. Now here's something to think about. Let's go back up to this blank one right here. Let's say some of these costumes from our other sprites, we kind of like those. We can go up here and click on the add button, and then from here you notice we can't access the actual sprite costumes, but there's a way around this. So to get around that, let's say we have our cat sprite over here. What we can do is we can go over to its costume that we have underneath the costumes tab, and we can click and drag the costume on top of the stage, and watch what happens. Now the stage has that costume, and it's been applied to one of the backdrops. You'll notice the dimensions of the backdrop here are 96 by 104. However, you'll notice it's all white. Okay, there's no transparency. Well, I guess that would be the transparency. However, the stage automatically does fill up the entire screen, even though it lists the costume as these dimensions. But the point is, if you need some costumes and you want to start making some stage backdrops out of these, you just drag the costumes over on top of the stage. It'll automatically bring it inside of the backdrops tab as one of the backdrops, and then you can go through and change it up and have some fun with it. Let's switch over to bitmap mode. So if we wanted to, we can just paint the screen, and that is our backdrop now. There is other ways you can go actually look for all of the images and import them. However, you need to know where all your files are stored, and my files are stored in a different location, so I'm not going to try to show you where all my files are stored to import them. If you know where your Scratch file, or excuse me, your Scratch folder for Scratch 2 is located, you'll be able to go and access all the individual art files, and then you can add them through just looking through your directory by clicking on the import button. That wraps up the stage and details. Remember, you always have to have a backdrop for your stage, even if it's blank. It's automatically going to fill up the entire dimensions of the screen, which is 40 by 360. Remember, there are no motion blocks for the stage, so if you're trying to program a sprite and you can't get the motion blocks to appear, you probably have the stage selected. Pen tool down here, you're only going to be able to access the clear block for the pen. And finally, on the looks, you're going to be limited on which looks blocks you'll be able to use on the stage. Before I let you go, I'm going to show you something really quick here. So on the stage, we have that selected. Now I'm going to click over here on the sprite, and notice the blue eye appears for the sprite. You click on that, you can access information for the sprite. It tells you XY coordinates, directions, rotation style, and some other information. You'll notice with the stage, we don't have that option with the stage because those aren't features of the stage. The stage just sits there. You can't do anything with the stage. Therefore, there's no information panel for the stage to be able to go through and look at the details. The stage will always be at 0, 0, and it will always take up the entire length or the width and height of the screen.